Hi all, let's have a look at the World Chess Championship Game 9. So the story so far, there were 7 draws to start off with. Then in the 8th, Sergey hit Magnus Carlsen with his first win. So Magnus a point deficit, and it's only a 12-game match, quite a short match. Let's see what happens in Game 9. E4. Sergey uses his most practiced move. He's played this much more than d4, I think more than 10 times as much as d4 in his chess career. We see e5 from Magnus. No strange defense here, no Sicilian defense, just classic. So we're going to royal pairs again, but actually we're going to slightly different variations than before, because black in this position doesn't play the standard bishop e7, but instead plays b5. This goes into arcangulist territory after b5 because it makes way for a very quick bishop c5. Sometimes bishop b7, bishop c5 are played, but this is the basic idea usually, bishop c5. Now, it's quite aggressive. We see a4, there's a bit of a downside here though. This structure is immediately attacked. Rook b8, c3, d6, d4 hitting the bishop, a takes, knight a3, trying to lure the pawn forward, because then knight c4 is actually a powerful move, putting a lot of pressure on e5. Black usually just sacks the b5 pawn because there's a very well-known idea here. Bishop g4 is putting a lot of pressure on d4 here, using this bishop, this aggressive bishop. Bishop c2 holds on to the pawn. This is the most common, well, pardon me, this is the most common continuation, bishop c2. Rook e1's also been played before here, but bishop c2 is the most common move. E takes, knight takes, knight takes, c takes, and black's idea is to damage white's pawn structure if white wants to hold on to this pawn, which he does actually, because after queen takes, then black would have no problems. After bishop takes d4, black might even be slightly better. So we have g takes f3, and knight h5. It looked kind of dangerous for white in a way, but what about this g file? That could be dangerous for black. We have king h1 with the idea of rook g1, dynamic piece play, pointing at black's king. Queen f6, hitting the center pawn, protecting the center pawn, and now c5, aggressive central play by black. It should be noted that rook a8 has been played a few times in this position, but okay, c5, it's hit back with e5. Sergey plays e5, and this requires a precise reply in the form of queen e6. Yeah, if d takes e5, then this is actually good for white. D takes c5, this position is going to be good for white. After queen e2, rook a6 hitting the queen. This sort of pin is just really annoying. White's doing nicely here. That dangerous pawn there. Note this is immune because of bishop takes h7. It's all together. White's doing very nicely there. So e5, yeah, we see queen e6, e takes, and now c4. You might think, well, is c takes d4 any good? C takes d4, this position, for example like this, is going to be a bit better for white after the exchanges. White's got the bishop here, the knight's still misplaced. Doesn't matter so much about the fractured pawns here. So, okay, we have c4, keeping this bishop kind of hemmed in. b3 trying to undermine. Now, black played c takes b3. If he plays c3, white has d5, and then queen d3, This position again is slightly annoying for black. This pin, slightly better for white. So we just see c takes b3, bishop takes, queen takes. Again, this annoying pin emerges. We've got pin as an issue, tactical issue, and also this kind of misplaced knight potentially. And this g file, yeah, there's some lurking dangers here for black. Rook fd8, rook g1. Now queen d7 unpins the bishop, so that means bishop takes d4 is on potentially. If we look at this position, you might think knight f4 is tempting, but just to show the dynamic pressure here, queen c2 threatens actually bishop takes f7 and queen f5 check, so the knight's a slight tactical liability, and if it goes back here then queen f5 is putting black on a defensive foot, to say the least. Yeah, black's better here. And yeah, very aggressive squares are taken by white. So knight f4 is not so good here. We have queen d7. So rook g4 protects d4, because that bishop was unpinned. Knight f6, the rook goes to h4. It looks a little bit on the awkward side, but it is functionally okay, holding d4, maybe being a nuisance on black's kingside at the right moment. Queen b5 was played here, hitting the rook. Another option you might think is queen b7. And here, yeah, white's slightly better. But queen b5, rook a1. Okay, now here we see the move g6. You might think, hold on, what about this b3 bishop? Is there something going on here? Let's actually just check this out for a moment. I don't think this works at all. Rook takes d4. In this position, not queen takes d4, but bishop takes d4. Because the back row, isn't it? It's just the back row is mating. Okay, so classic back row. So g6 doesn't make some air for the king. We have rook b1 threatening bishop takes f7 check and taking the queen. Queen goes back. Queen d3, and there's some things brewing on g6, as you can see. This pawn's pins. Things are brewing against g6. For example, rook g1, rook takes g6. It's dangerous looking. We see knight d5 unpinning f7. Rook g1. And then black has to be careful. He plays bishop c7 just to show the dangers of this position. If knight takes e3, white has a forced mate actually. Can you see? If I give you 5 seconds, can you work out the forced mate? You might want to pause the video with 5 seconds. Okay, rook takes g6 is actually a forced mate because there's a quiet killer move in this position. Did you work it out here? 5 seconds again. White's playing mate. Queen f6 forces a mate. Next move with rook h8. So yeah, can't take this as an example of disaster. Okay, so bishop c7. Now we have bishop g5. This campaign just kind of loosened d5 now. Of course, black doesn't want to play a move like this just on principle, weakening that diagonal. And I think it's actually just taken anyway. It's just it's that knight's pinned there. No, the rook moves. Queen c4. Black's got to be really careful. Of course, he can't move here because of queen takes f7 and mating with queen h7. But more subtle here, this is also very bad. because if queen takes f7 and rook takes h7 and rook takes c7, that's much better for white. So yeah, this has to be a very careful move here, and rook b5 just carefully supports that knight, avoiding an f7 disaster. Queen c2 threatening bishop a4, and now an interesting response indeed, rook a8, setting a little trap actually in this position, a little trap. It's tempting to play bishop a4, isn't it? Can you see what black can play here? If I give you 5 seconds. This didn't happen. Bishop a4 was not played. Rook takes a4, gets the queen away from f5. Black can actually play here. Guess what? Queen f5, which would be enough for a draw. But yeah, and you might think, well, that's not too bad for white if he wants to draw then, which he does, potentially, but white has known this, maybe if he's got a small advantage here, to try and play something else. So yeah, he plays bishop c4, playing for a win, should we say, if he did see that continuation, which I'm sure he did. So bishop c4, the rook moves, bishop d2, hitting the rook again, rook a4, queen d3, threatening bishop b5 now. These bishops are annoying, aren't they? We see rook a1. That's taken, letting the king come to g2. You might think this is an interesting decision because it leaves potentially what looks like a misplaced rook on h4, but it can always come to e4 here. Now there's a very delicate position after knight e7. This f7 seems a bit tender, shall we say, and there's two ways to try and make use of this f7 pawn. In the game we saw bishop takes f7, but there's evidence actually that this is very interesting. I'm going to have a look at that soon. There's evidence here that queen b3 is actually really good. Just to show you, if queen f5, this is a mistake because rook e4 and black gets overloaded. Basically he's trying to defend f7, and if he counterattacks here, this is insufficient. Bishop, here not rook takes e7 because black can actually play this, drag the queen here away from f3 and get perpetual at least. But in this position, if white's not too quick to take e7, they actually do something about f3 first. Bishop f, in this position, bishop f4 is actually really good for white, winning for white, because takes blocks f3. Taking here is actually winning for white, because bishop d6, we're actually winning black's queen here. If king g7, we got bishop e6 check, winning the queen. And the same thing with king f8, we have check, winning the queen here. So this is not sufficient. It seems queen f5, it seems by force black is crumbling to bits after rook e4 here. Yeah. You might think, well, hold on a sec, what if the knight moved? Is this really lost? If the knight moves, bishop h6 seals kind of mating nets, potentially. This is really bad for black. Yeah, winning material anyway. The knight's not particularly great on c6. And if here, again, bishop h6, it's just too dangerous, this position. So yeah, after queen b3, queen f5 seems insufficient. So this might be the best move, hitting the rook. Then we have this line, bishop takes f7. And the best move here might be king g7, because if queen takes, White ends up picking up more material after takes and get his material back. Either taking the bishop, or if the knight goes in the way, bishop h6. And this is, as the example line, not at all great for black. It's just several pawns down. Don't need to go further there. So yeah, queen b3 seems very interesting. Now if we follow the main line of this, just from a scientific perspective, king g7 might be the best try here. And the rook's left awkward after rook h3. And it's because of this intuitively, I suspect, it wasn't too lucrative for Sergey to calculate that much further. But if we look at this, say queen d3, because remember this diagonal, it's too dangerous to take on d4 because of this diagonal. That was hitting the rook, so the rook moves. If we have a look at this position, it seems white's going to be better here. The rook is only temporarily misplaced. It's after f4, for example. If black didn't play bishop e5, then that's a huge bishop on this diagonal. But yeah, so bishop e5 lets f4, which opens up the rook, and this just ends up being better for white. It's difficult to sort of see all of this stuff, though. You have to be a supercomputer to work out queen b3 is definitely better than what was played. So we have bishop takes f7, check here, and this is very dangerous for black anyway. If queen e6, this just loses to check. Take it here, and there's all sorts of nasties in this position. White is threatening, I believe, actually rook takes e7 is, among other things. No, actually the main thing that's threatened is the mate in 5 with queen c5. If rook a6, as an example, check, taking there as a disaster scenario. So yeah, essentially queen e6 is just losing. It's just a losing position. If the king goes to f8, that's losing for black. By process of elimination, if king e8, rook takes h7 is losing because of queen f7, and not actually queen f8, but rook h8 will be mating, because the king's getting the queen e8 resources there, so rook h8 will be mating there. For example here, check, not queen f8, queen e8, but rook h8 check, and then mating. So yeah, queen e6 is insufficient. The only move really is king g7. Magnus is holding on basically by a thread, you could say. d5, threatening bishop c3 and queen d4, but queen d4 might just have the idea of bishop c3 not winning the rook, just try and mate black instead. So dangerous. Knight f5, offering the rook. If the rook, just to show this, if the rook moves, this is a complicated position. If the rook moves, I think it's going to be a disaster if black tries to move the rook out. Because of check, this battery is gigantic after bishop c3. This is, although black's a piece up, but it's crashing through. This battery is murder. Not like that though, because the queen's hanging here. No, in this position, pardon me, in this position, right so far, queen takes h7 check is the right move. And if here, check, and the point is, it's with check now winning the queen, so we don't have to worry about the white queen being lost. Yeah, this is absolute murder, this position here, after bishop c3. Threatening mate on g7. That's why, yeah, knight takes d5 check, queen takes h7 is the strongest. Rook takes h7 is actually only equal here, funny enough. This position is just equal, apparently. there's nothing better than here, here, here. No, actually there's rook takes h2 as an improvement there. That's why we get equality. According to engine here, equality. But yeah, this is really dangerous, this idea of this battery, essentially. The astonishing thing about this position is the calculation that must have gone into rook d1 in particular to stop the battery construction. So this is much stronger than rook a8. And it's here that forcing moves actually just get a winning advantage for white. Bishop h6 check doesn't give black too many possibilities. If king h8, then we mate with queen c3 check. We're going to be mating on g7. On king f7, actually let's put on like a bit here just to make sure. d6 check, yes, d6 check. And actually it's not about winning a piece or anything, it's just rook f4 here. Everything's falling to bits quite quickly. But the really interesting thing about this is if king f6, on king f6, can you see what white can play if I give you 5 seconds here? Amazing resources. Okay, bishop g5 check. And if king takes, rook takes h7, this is just it's crazy. But this is like the strongest in this position, and this is going to be very dangerous. If king f6 check, as an example, check, 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 and yeah, the king is getting done over a bit. The rook's loose. Yeah, this is incredible lines which stem from this position after rook d1. I'm not sure how much calculation Sergey did here, but this is just incredible that rook d1, yeah, we have this bishop h6 check with bishop g5. And if we say king g7, the idea is revealed now. Well, d6 first. Check is mating like this. It's a nice mating pattern with rook takes h7. And if queen takes, again, this is at least winning the queen and black's falling to bits. I'll take the knight. Yeah, it seems rook d1 is just refutable with bishop h6. I mean, this is just a labyrinth, though. If you look at this position, it's crazy. It's like the king's drawn out. This is just a variation behind the game. It's incredible. But this position, I mean, actually, if you look at it, black's 2 pieces up here, but is actually losing. If takes, check, takes, and the king is just too, it's not safe enough. White ends up winning material and the game. Yeah, incredible stuff there in these variations on rook d1. Okay. So again, a very, very clever response. Just not being too materialistic. Knight f5 hitting the rook. Concerned about this battery. We have check, and white ends up just a pawn up, which could have been worse. And black is careful not to lose another pawn. Plays queen f7. If he plays king 8, that blunders a pawn, of course, in the game, basically. No, careful not to lose another pawn. And there's a lot of probing now from this point on, move 47. But Magnus is able to hold this position. After all, White's pawn is only a doubled one, a bit of a token extra pawn, so it should be holdable. A lot of shuffling, a lot of checks all around the place. Key point here, Black avoids exchange of bishops, and yeah, it just should be enough to just draw. Yeah, I had some tense moments tactically this game, which for a player like myself, I'm always interested in the dynamic, aggressive possibilities, and yeah, the game had quite a few of them behind the scenes. So quite an exciting draw, I would say. Okay, so only 3 games to go. Magnus has got to get back a point somewhere pretty soon, otherwise we'll have a new world chess champion if we have another 3 draws. So exciting match now. The match has really got mega exciting. Comments, questions, likes, appreciated. Thanks very much.